Bartoshuk points out that supertasters tend to be pretty boring eaters. Most of them prefer to avoid the intense taste experiences that come with highly flavored foods, so their diets are often bland and narrow. I knew a man once who lived on a habitual diet of lima beans and milk. I would bet good money he was a supertaster. In particular, bitter greens and other vegetables don't show up very often on the plates of most supertasters. That's where I start to get confused, because that doesn't sound like me. I love collard greens, rapini, and other bitter vegetables. I always pick the hoppiest beer I can find. I drink my coffee black and without sugar. Tonic water is my soft drink of choice. Indeed, the only one I ever drink. In contrast, Bartoshuk, a non-taster, has very pronounced food aversions. She detests tonic water, for example. "When I first tasted it, I couldn't believe it was a beverage," she says. "I cannot stand greens. The bitter taste is just beyond belief to me." So, what's going on? It's time to look more closely at this whole supertaster notion, which turns out to be more complex than it appears at first glance. A little background. Even though we talk loosely about tasting complex foods like wine and cheese, most of their flavor actually comes from our sense of smell. In fact, even though we usually treat smell and taste as one and the same, they actually have different jobs to do. Smell is all about identification. It answers the question, what is it? It tells you the difference between rosemary and oregano, Brie and Stilton, or Cabernet Sauvignon and Pinot Noir. It tells you when something is burning on the stove, and it tells you that the dog needs a bath. We can even recognize the odor of our own bodies and those of our sweethearts. Taste, in contrast, answers a different question. Do I want to eat this? Taste is all about broad categories of good and bad, the yes-no, red light, green light decisions that would have been so crucial for our hunter-gatherer ancestors. As omnivores without access to grocery stores, they had to make these calls every day, and our taste repertoire bears witness. Everyone knows the 4 basic tastes: sweet, salty, sour, and bitter. If you've been paying attention the past few years, you've probably heard of a 5th, umami, a Japanese term that means delicious flavor and is usually translated as savory, brothy, or meaty. There might be additional basic tastes too, as we'll see. A closer look at each of those 5 tastes reveals a lot about what was important to our ancestors. Sweet tastes, most obviously, mark the presence of sugars, an important source of calories. Even starchy foods, such as potatoes and grains, yield a hint of sweetness as we chew, because enzymes in our saliva break down the starches into sweet-tasting sugars. Umami comes from amino acids, in particular one called glutamate, though others contribute as well, that indicate the presence of proteins, another major class of nutrients. And our taste for salt would have helped our ancestors identify the electrolytes that were so precious and hard to find before salt shakers sat on every table. Hardly surprising, then, that we're hardwired, even as infants, to be drawn to sweet, umami, and salty tastes. But taste also warns us when we're about to eat something that might be harmful. Many toxins taste bitter, so we're hardwired to reject bitter foods. Just watch the face of a toddler who unknowingly sips from a glass of tonic water, or, for that matter, an adult who gets surprised by a bitter-tasting berry or a first taste of aquavit or Fernet Branca. The bitterness triggers our poison avoidance reflex, and we make a yucky